infra means. Two key learnings which I see and is a takeaway for the sector is in a PPP, you have a public and a private. When you talk about a partnership, you need to bring in the expertise and the strength of each partner. What does the public or the government brings in? Is the best of that they can have absorb the risk. The cost of capital for the government is the lowest. No one can beat that. The private sector brings in the expertise and the knowledge in terms of building the world-class infrastructure, operation, quality, cost efficiencies. These are the strengths which are private sector. If you can combine these two, and particularly look at that in infra, you have two kinds of risk. One is during the construction period and post-construction. In India, the biggest challenge is during the construction period. And having been in the financing of the infrastructure sector, more particularly in the construction equipment space for the last 28 years now, we see every contractor who has been building, the challenges which they face, whether it is their disputes pending, whether it is bid bonds or working capital requirements or capital requirements, because they were the ones who moved into becoming a sponsor and an owner of an infra project, and that is where the problems and challenges happen. If both these two roles were different, a developer and a construction company should have been separated in order to ensure and mitigating the risk, but that per se did not happen, unfortunately, because the financial system did not evolve that much. So today, the financial sector has been burdened with this huge NPLs, challenges because the projects got delayed. And as the project gets delayed, the interest cost in India was high, it keeps on accumulating. And that's what has hit the system. So therefore, I think at this juncture, as the evolutions are happening, the projects are getting completed, construction risk is getting over, there's a huge opportunity for investors in the brownfield assets. And that's what we see in the last 6 months. A good amount of investors globally have started to come in. Even the government, the NHI and all are working towards creating existing projects and selling them out in order to get the capital to reach here. So therefore, I think that if we look at the financing solutions going forward, it needs to be to see how in brownfield projects we can attract investors as soon as the construction risk is over. The projects have started to get operationalized. It is a great movement for pension funds, investors globally to come and look at this sector, because in India the returns are still much higher with a good stable economy, macro levels being better. The exchange risks can also be well mitigated, and returns can be for long term, give both for domestic pension funds and for global pension fund the attractive investment opportunity, looking at the global interest rates. So that is one key area. In terms of new and greenfield projects, the way I see it, then the financing needs to be broken up is during the construction period, it has to be in many sectors, the government take that risk to a certain extent, like a EPC job, and then go out to sell it. In some sectors like highways and all, that could be possible, or a hybrid model could be possible to a certain extent. In other sectors, it could be basically the construction and the operation management is given to the private sector, and the assets are held whether through pension fund or government institutions, and segregate the ownership of the asset to the operation of the asset. And that asset co and opco model in an infra would play a very important role going forward. Other area which I think as a financing can help in many of the infra space is leasing. I think India has lost that for the last almost about 15-18 years, since multiplicity of taxes killed that as a product. I remember way back in the mid-90s when we were working on, we backed a working whereby we were leasing railway tracks to the government way back in 95, and for a 15-year contract on a leasing. I think there's so much of assets in which goes on in the infra, whether it is rolling stocks, whether it is even in the power sector, there could be In the railways, there can be a huge opportunities. In airports, there is a good opportunities. So I think if that as a product can be evolved effectively, that can be one additional source. And the advantage there basically is that the cost of capital can be brought down substantially, because you are selling depreciation to people who need that, and as a result of that, the cost of money can come down on a post-tax basis. So therefore, it benefits infrastructure substantially. So wherever the sectors and areas where leasing would be possible, I think that can be a great tool going forward. It will mitigate risk for the financiers, for the investors and the lessors, and it will create an opportunity of raising resources for that. I think these are some of the ways with which, but I can say that there is a huge opportunity going forward in the country in the space of infra. With the rules and regulations getting better, arbitration and disputes being processes being set up much better, I see the risk can be mitigated for financiers and investors like me.
Thank you, Sri. I now request Anita George, the Managing Director of GES, the depot, to tell us about the foreign institutional investors' perspective on the opportunities that you perceive in emerging markets such as India, and where do you really find yourself putting in your money, and what do you perceive as the challenges and opportunities?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chandra, and thank you ICBC for inviting me here. I'm hoping that you'll indulge me to give you two personal stories to start with, because it sets the context of why I'm here and with CDPQ. So the first ever airplane ride that I took in my life was with Air Canada and to Vancouver City. I went at the age of 16 and joined the Lester B. Pearson College of the Pacific, and that's really where my high school education took place. And that link with Canada brings me full circle many years later to CDPQ, which is the second largest pension fund of Canada for the province of Quebec. And my second story is really to put the context in which CDPQ invests anywhere in the world. So I was in a taxi cab in a recent trip to Montreal, and the cab driver asked me if I was there for holiday or for work. And I said, work. And he said, who do you work for in Montreal? CDPQ. And then he said to me, CDPQ manages my money, my pension. So I said, yes. And he said, so where's your office? And I said, in India. And then he actually stopped the cab and turned around to look at me and said, what is CDPQ doing in India? And I said, we are investing your money very carefully, very consciously, and that every morning when I wake up, I first think of you, whose money I'm investing in many growth markets. So why India, Ms. Chandra? So CDPQ, I would say, is a latecomer to growth markets, but a very committed investor in growth markets. And we are very selective. We just have 5 growth market countries that we're focusing on: India, China, Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia for now. And India might be my bias, but is definitely top of the crop.
You hear that?
And why India? A few weeks ago, my boss, Mr. Michael Sabia, our CEO and president, was here, and he gave a speech, and he talked about the grey world in which India is a bright spot. He quoted a statistic from the Bank of England, which shows that interest rates in the developed countries is the lowest it's been for 5,000 years. So this is really a period in the global economy where there is a lot of gray, a lot of bleakness, and India stands out. However, as my boss and as I go on to say that that's not the only reason to be in India. India, it's really the fundamentals of India. The fact that we have a very dynamic, young and growing labor force. Yes, we do need education, we do need skills training, but that's a huge advantage that we really have to take advantage of. And the second is, as many people have alluded to here, the opportunities, both in terms of infrastructure, as well as across all the 5 asset classes that CDPQ covers. So whether we are talking about real estate, infrastructure, private equity, both direct and through funds, listed equities, India has the most dynamic stock market, as well as fixed income. And the bond that was mentioned by Mr. Babu is again opportunity where India is innovating. And one of the other fundamentals that attracts us to India, especially now, is going beyond the growth numbers to real structural, legal, and regulatory reforms. So it's no coincidence that the sectors that CDPQ has invested in are also related to the sectors where India has made dramatic regulatory changes in the recent past. So earlier, I think the High Commissioner mentioned CDPQ's investment in TVS Logistics, and the fact that the GST bill, which converts India to a common market, and the real impetus that gives to logistics and the scope and potential for that sector, in no small part was a motivation for us to make a significant investment in TVS Logistics. Secondly, the bankruptcy law, the amendment of the SARFAESI Act, has, and I would say the government's focus on cleaning up the banking system in India, and as mentioned by several speakers here, the health of the banking system is critical for infrastructure. The health and the ability of the capital markets to really fund infrastructure is also very critical for progress in this very key sector. So we have announced a commitment of 300 million focused on providing structured credit, especially to medium and smaller enterprises who don't today have access to credit, and a significant investment in asset reconstruction. And here we are really focusing on not just financial recovery, which is very important, but also operational turnaround. And our investment in the energy sector actually focuses on that in partnership with Tata Power and ICICI. We've created a platform to do 100% buyouts of brownfield assets, as was mentioned by Mr. Kanoria, of which there are many, but which are not performing at capacity, may have issues with linkages both to the fuel source as well as to the customers. And in this platform, we are focusing across the power sector, so generation, and I'm happy to say to the NHPC chairman that hydro is definitely a part of this, as well as transmission and distribution. So not just focusing on generation, but the entire value chain of the power sector. The second investment we have is in solar, which is an area we see as playing a major role in terms of transforming India's ability to generate adequate electricity and do so in a clean manner and a sustainable manner. So having said this, what's next? I think for CDPQ, what we would really like to do is we are here to learn. We are here to understand. And the best way to do that is to partner with really top players. And here, definitely, we have already Tata's, TVS, these are marquee names. But we are also backing up the up-and-coming entrepreneurial developers and promoters like Edelweiss and Azure. And we do that because truly we feel these are the companies, and in partnership with them, we can contribute to the infrastructure and other sectors. We also like to see ourselves, and I often get asked, so what distinguishes CDPQ from other pension funds and other long-term capital providers? What really makes me proud to be part of CDPQ is that we are not just bringing money, but we are bringing solutions. And this is not a cliche. If you look at what CDPQ has done in infrastructure in Quebec, so we've come up with what I think could be a very innovative model, where in partnership with the government, we have created a program called Infra Quebec. And what Infra Quebec does is to really look at the areas where infrastructure investment is needed. And given that a lot of the infrastructure in Canada is now 30, 40 years old, so it's really a good time to look at how, in partnership with the government, we can direct pension fund money towards building of infrastructure in Quebec. So one of the first projects we are looking at is actually a metro project that would connect the city of Montreal, the city center, to the airport. Similarly, we would like to work through this program in many other sectors, including the highway sector. Also, CDPQ is a part owner of Heathrow Airport. So the airport sector is one where we see a lot of potential. And I have to say that my boss was very impressed at the transformation of Delhi, Mumbai airports, which he had seen some years ago. And he couldn't believe how they've been transformed. And then the renewable energy sector, CDPQ is one of the largest financiers of renewable energy in North America, with close to 8,000 megawatts financed. So this is another area where we really want to bring our experience and share and learn from our partners in India. Another sector where we are very active is the port sector. So we own a part of Brisbane Port, for example, and several others. And then last but not least, the logistics sector, which we think is a key one in India, where one of the highest costs of goods transportation is in India, close to 13% of the GDP, whereas in most countries it's sub 5. So this is an area which can really open up the economy and bring in a lot of, I would say, multiplier impact of economic growth. And key to this is the road sector. So Mr. Chandra, I hope and I really look forward to finding the right partner in India to be able to create a platform for brownfield assets where we can bring investments, as well as our experience from many countries where we have been playing in the highway sector across the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita, for that excellent and well deliberated address on the financing opportunities and what you perceive of India. Friends, now I'll open it up for a few quick question answers from the audience. Please give us your name and also the panelists whom you want to answer your question, don't make them as statements, make them as very pointed, specific questions. We'll be very happy to take your questions. The chairman himself.
This is to you, Mr. Chandra. This is Rakesh Naga here. Since any infrastructure, road remains highest amongst the highest, which is a visible when you talk about infrastructure is concerned. And it's a showcase how the roads are there, the country infrastructure is measured initially like that. With you being as a chairperson of an HEI, there has been a flurry of activities that has taken place in the last 2-3 years are concerned. And my question to you, when do you think India too can have such beautiful roads when we go like we see in the West? Do you think in our lifetime, do you think we do see a change? And actually, in honest terms, we believe the person like you, if you continue the leadership like this thing, we can see a very positive change in the road is concerned. And what do you think are the bottlenecks which are holding us back? And what do you think actually needs to be done more to see a good quality road in India?
Very relevant question. You know, this has to be answered with a bit of a historical perspective, and which is that whereas most countries started on their highway program in the late 30s or 40s or at best by the 50s, India launched it only in 1999. So it actually translated into action on the ground in 2001 with the launching of the NHDP program in the Vajpayee government. And it has evolved over time from a publicly funded program, it became an entirely public-private partnership program, to once again a healthy balance between the publicly funded route and the public-private partnership mode. There are various reasons for why this evolution has taken place. So there is therefore, we lost about 4 or 5 decades in undertaking the highway development program. And because we were so late, so we actually started on a program of widening our roads. So these were really brownfield developments in that sense, where we undertook to broaden and widen a 2-lane to a 4-lane and a 4-lane to a 6-lane, whereas most other countries, because they had the space, they had the time, economic development was still chugging along at a very easy pace. So there was no necessity to undertake this in a radical kind of way. So they undertook greenfield expressways and highways. You know, the Dwight D. Eisenhower program of freeways and interstates was about entirely fresh greenfield expressways. Whereas we have undertaken the widening program. When will we achieve complete fruition? Well, I would think that there is clearly work for us to do for the next 10 or 12 years on the highway sector. And increasingly we are focusing now on bridging the gap in a very drastic way by undertaking development in a more holistic manner, where we are looking at corridor efficiency, not just at building a particular stretch. There is a huge expressways program which is on the anvil, where all major cities are expected to be connected through access-controlled greenfield expressways. Like, for instance, we have the Eastern Peripheral Expressway connecting North Haryana to Southern Haryana, the Western Peripheral Expressway, we've got the Vadodara-Mumbai Expressway, which is, some part of it is done, other parts are getting bid out. We'll have the Bangalore-Chennai Expressway, various other expressways throughout the length and breadth of the country, and that will bring about a radical transformation in the way we look at our highways. Also along with that, as I mentioned, the highway development and management systems, which were completely lacking because there was such a deficit. We only concentrated on construction. We never looked at a more holistic manner of dealing with it. So I think we are on the right path, but it will take clearly 7 to 8 years before we can be perfectly satisfied with where we achieve. There's one last question.
I'm Venkat from IBA. We have a company from India. My question is to Ms. Anita while rightly said that we are in the right time where the technology deployments have actually started across the infrastructure sector. How do you see investing in the technology projects and technology firms in India? Because now a lot of emphasis is coming on smart cities or highway traffic management systems, so on and so forth.
Thank you very much. If you look at the private equity investments in India in the last 10 years, 45% of the investments have gone into the technology sector. And there have been some truly success stories. And something that has always made me feel makes India stand out is the entrepreneurship and innovation of Indian businessmen and inventors. Recently, I had the chance to visit a company that is manufacturing robots that can help in terms of logistics. And this kind of sector, for a pension fund like CDPQ, and please remember my taxi driver, we are very measured in the risks we can take. Having said that, in our partner companies and in our partner investments, we are very much, along with looking at the whole investment thesis, we look at the role of digitizing and bringing in digital tools into the companies to improve efficiency. And this is something that we plan to do, working very closely in TVS Logistics, in Edelweiss, in Azure, as well as in the platform that we are developing with Tata Power and ICICI. And I think India really has a huge advantage in this sector, and this is what can help us leapfrog in infrastructure as well, from, instead of going step by step, to really become state of the art.
I think there is a great opportunity, and clearly for the next 10 to 15 years, infrastructure in India is going to be the buzzword. It's going to be the sector where there will be maximum traction. And I think, Anita, companies such as yours are well poised to facilitate and invest into this sector, because it's a grand opportunity. The private sector has a great role to play, and we in India today realize the fact that the private sector is necessary to ensure life cycle efficiencies. The government has provided an extremely stable and enabling environment for foreign direct investment, for institutional investment into the infrastructure sector. All in all, I think we're on the cusp of a major historic leap, and we are all poised to leapfrog into the future. And I think we will bridge that infrastructure deficit in a very significant, in a very stable, and in a systematic way. Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you, Mr. Chandra, and thank you all the panelists for giving us such a very productive discussion. Just one quick thing I just want to mention is that from ICPC also we, in a way of giving back, we have, if you notice in your kits, there's a small notebook which is, I think in keeping with the Prime Minister's Swachh Bharat campaign, we have, ILFS, Environment Division, which is headed by Mr. Mahesh Babu, interestingly enough, Anita George's husband. They have converted waste, they're converting waste into energy or into other things, and they have these rat pickers, they have tried to give them work, and they have made these wonderful products which we have put together and got from ICPC. So it's not only in your kits, but also we have given some gifts to the speakers. So just wanted to acknowledge that, and it's, I hope that all of you can support them sometime or the other. Thank you, everybody. We'll just take a 5-minute break. Start with the next session.
और तो लग रही थी छो 3 बार कैमरा हिला दिया मैंने आपको कुछ बोला नहीं मेरा फोटो गंदा नहीं रिकॉर्डिंग खराब हो गई है
Joint Secretary ILC Department of Economic Affairs, Ministry of Finance, Government of India. Thank you. Mr. Nathan Nelson, Chief Representative, Export Development Canada, ETC, a great support to the Chamber. And Mr. Sujoy Bose, CEO, National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. I think a lot of firsts for Sujoy. First time I think here with us in his official